my eating disorder, I was eating, and I was eating a lot. People making fun of me because I was the 90-pound child in the class. I remember a counselor recommended that I look at Weight Watchers. I felt like an outcast, and that definitely trickled down into my childhood. I don't remember not ever being on a diet.
So, Nieka, we're gonna have a little fun today. We're gonna go over a few myths about eating disorders. I'm gonna read it off, and I'm gonna need you to tell me if it's true or not, okay?
Okay.
You up for the challenge?
I am.
All right, let's go. So the first one we have here is individuals with eating disorders do not eat.
That is totally false.
Okay, tell me more about that.
On a personal level, my eating disorder, I was eating, and I was eating a lot. I was hiding and binge eating, and a lot of people focus on the anorexia, bulimia, the weight loss of everything, and individuals not eating, but there's definitely another side to that, and I think the erasure of the other side of eating disorder, which is binge eating, hiding food, having a negative relationship with food, fat phobia is alive and well.
Yeah.
And so a lot of times it's forgotten about.
Yeah.
And it's unfortunate.
You're right. Like, a lot of people think about not eating, and they also think about underweight and thinness.
Right.
But people can have eating disorders in all size bodies.
That's right.
And a lot of times it does become this cycle of binging, where a person kind of loses control of how much they're eating in the moment, or eats more than they plan to, or eats to a point of feeling like physically sick.
Right.
And sometimes that accompanies not eating, but not always.
Right,
So
for sure.
thank you so much.
Yeah.
You got this one. You nailed this one.
Yay.
So let's try this one. A person's weight or body size can confirm the presence or absence of an eating disorder.
That is also very false.
Yeah.
Just as you mentioned, eating disorders comes in, different body styles, types. It is not just particular to one type of body, which a lot of us think it is, the thin body, but that's the farthest thing from the truth.
Yeah. It's really important for people to keep that mindset. So, one, if they're experiencing some difficulties with their relation to food, they don't discredit themselves just because they're not presenting or showing up in the way that they think about eating disorders.
Right.
And to also help professionals know that they need to be screening for this proactively, regardless of a person's size.
I too didn't realize eating disorders affected me because of my size. I've been a large person for as long as I can remember. My first just full consciousness of it was when I was 9 years old. People making fun of me because I was the 90-pound child in the class when we had to do like the physical fitness test in PE, and we got our weight publicly announced to the class.
Wow.
I had my just first realization of my size, not knowing that at that time I was dealing with an eating disorder. It wasn't until I was older and the whole body positivity movement that I realized, okay, I too am sick. I too need to go and, talk to a professional. I need to do the inner work so that, I can remove this is sickness, the sickness, remove the sickness, remove the illness. But I had to realize that it was something that people struggled with, and I didn't, because I was larger and no one was talking about that.
Yeah. So the next one is dieting is harmless and not linked to eating disorders. So I'm not sure what your experience may have been with this, but this is a really important one to highlight because this is false. Like, dieting is not harmless. And it's actually been shown to put people at risk for going on to develop eating disorders, or at the very least to have disordered eating behaviors. And so a lot of people do try different diets for different reasons and think that there's no relation or correlation with eating disorders, but it's actually not true.
Yeah, that was my life.
Yeah.
First diet around 8 years old. My parents, they didn't mean to cause any harm. Like, my mom was very active in high school. She was actually teased about the opposite. She was teased about being really skinny. So she played the flute, and she was on the drill team, and she did it simultaneously. And my dad, he was on the football team, and so they really prioritized their bodies, and in turn, we were placed on diets. I was going on walks and hikes with my dad in the Texas heat, miles and miles. Like I said, I don't think they realized that it was harmful. But that diet culture, from Weight Watchers to Jenny Craig. I remember a counselor recommended that I look at Weight Watchers.
How old were you?
I think I was around 10 years old.
Yeah.
I went to her office. I was really sad, crying. I had been bullied for a while, but that day, it was a group of boys who refused to sit in my seat whenever we would like switch classes, and I saw them through the window like arguing about who was going to sit in my seat, and that really got to me. I don't know why, out of all things, that really got to me. I felt like an outcast, and I ended up going to the counselor's office, and she was like, "Have you tried Weight Watchers?"
And that was a response, not like those kids maybe need to like engage differently with you.
Correct.
Yeah.
And I remember I cried even harder. I didn't have the language for, what I didn't know what to say back to her. I was just like,
Sure.
No, I haven't. I've heard of it. I don't even remember the conversation after that, but I know that impacted me. Like even now when I think about it, I'm like, there's no way she should have said that to me.
Yeah.
But she and my parents and other people, the diet culture, it was like the lifeblood back then. Like, if you weren't on a diet, like, what were you doing with your life? You don't care about your body.
Right.
And that definitely trickled down into my childhood. I don't remember not ever being on a diet.
Yeah. So how about this one? Men and boys are rarely affected by eating disorders. What do you think?
To say rarely, that's almost like not. I would say that that's false. I think everyone, they're affected by it in a certain way, but I feel like women are more likely to find information about their bodies.
Sure.
And I think that comes from diet culture, being able to have these conversations mainly focused on the female aspect or the women aspect of it. So yeah, I think that's false. I think men and boys also deal with it. They just are probably not as open to talk about it or to get help.
A lot of times people think of it as something that primarily happens to like women, particularly young girls. And though it can show up a little bit differently in males, sometimes it's a little bit more focused on like bulking up and muscle mass, a little bit different than like, specifically going for a thin aesthetic.
Yes.
But that is totally a myth. Men are absolutely affected by eating disorders. And to your point, they don't always see themselves represented in the conversations,
Right.
representation around eating
Right.
disorders. So
Right.
it kind of further perpetuates that myth. Yeah.
I agree.
Yeah. So let's see, what else do we have? How about this? The solution is simply to eat more or eat less.
That's false.
Okay.
Absolutely false. I feel like a lot of the focus is on, like for an eating disorder, a lot of the focus is on the eating. It's even in the name. However, it is a mental work. Like the transformation internally is what's going to present itself outside. And so a part of my journey was being able to focus on one thing for a shorter period of time instead of thinking of it as this really long and grueling journey. So my wife and I, every year, we go on a vegan diet for 40 days. It's kind of like a meditation for us, just knowing that we can fulfill what our body needs with fruits and vegetables and like trying new recipes and things like that for that time, and we're both doing it together. I feel like that has helped me gain mental clarity, knowing that I can reach certain goals, whether they're short term or long term. And we don't see that as like a diet or cutting out. We see it as a time for us to like really come together, really focus on like healthy foods and seeing what's out there in that healthy area. Because I'm always gonna, I'm from the South, so I love to, try different foods and eat different foods. And then I've also discovered that I really love trying new recipes and kind of limiting myself on what I could put in those recipes is kind of like a brain game.
Yeah, you have to get creative.
Yeah, we get creative, and so that's our focus. Every year we do that for like 40 days, and it's an amazing time for us. It's all mental for me.
Yeah, I think that, one of the things that this gets at too is just like considering all of the other things that come along with the eating disorder, like the eating more, eating less is a behavior or a symptom of something else that is going on internally. And a lot of times that has to do with like body image. A lot of times it has to do with self-esteem. A lot of times it has to do with reacting to like societal expectations and norms. And a lot of times eating disorders come along with other mental health conditions like a clinical anxiety disorder or a clinical depressive disorder. And so it's not sufficient just to focus only on eating more or eating less.
And sometimes we forget the tools. Like I've been in therapy for as long as I can remember. I also went through doing like the mental work. I've since lost over 140 pounds, no longer binge eating. However, there are days where the body dysmorphia is real and I forget some of those coping tools that were just told to me maybe 2 weeks ago. So just staying on top of it and constantly being reminded that first of all, there is help out there. Secondly, that it's a continuous lifelong work. And if you would like to, maintain the positive body image that you have, and not allowing your wellness or what you consider healing be the same thing that prevents you from continuing and maintaining that healing. Like sometimes we feel good and you're like, okay, I don't have to go to the doctor for a checkup, but we can't do that when it comes to our mental health. Like we have to constantly be shown tools and new developments and, talking to people who are the professionals in order to maintain that.
It's also changing the way your brain is thinking.
Yes.
It's challenging those like negative eating disordered thoughts. And it's also addressing the other things that may be showing up with the eating disorder, like other health conditions. What would have been helpful for you to hear when you first started on this journey?
One thing that I say like every morning on our announcements to our middle schoolers is that you matter, you belong here, we love having you here. That covers a lot of things. They matter, they belong here, and we love having them here. But another thing that I would want to share with them is that help, like going to get help, and I know that sounds simple, but for me, I was stuck in the paralysis of, okay, what will people think? Who can I talk to that's a trusted adult, a trusted person? I wasn't using those resources because my brain was just in a constant loop of, okay, what will my parents think? Mental health, it was such a stigma in my family. But nowadays at the school level, there are so many mental health professionals who are available. It's mandated in a lot of states to have mental health professionals and social workers at the school site. So just reaching out to them.
So it looks like we have busted all the myths. And I really enjoyed you bringing your personal perspective to help us learn a lot more about eating disorders and what's true and what's not.
Yes, I appreciate the opportunity. I love what Jed is doing. I love what YouTube is doing right now. I think it's so timely and so important, especially for our young people to see something like this. I would have loved to see something like this growing up.
Yeah.